It's 6:14 inches the morning. Daniel Reeves is standing in the parking lot of a hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina. He hasn't cried. Not yet. He got the call at 4:52 a.m. His business partner of 9 years, the man who co-signed the lease, who shook hands on every major deal, who was supposed to fly to the client meeting on Friday, has just been rushed into emergency surgery. Uncertain outcome, unknown timeline, and in 3 hours the bank opens. And in 3 hours the bank is expecting a signed authorization that requires 2 signatures, his and his partner's. And in 3 hours, if that authorization doesn't go through, the loan that keeps 41 employees paid goes into default. Daniel Reeves is 41 years old. He built this company from a folding table in his garage. He has faced difficult weeks before, difficult months, the kind of seasons that make a man question whether any of it is worth it. He has never faced a morning like this one. And the thing that will save him, the thing that already exists inside him, lying dormant like an undetonated solution, he doesn't know its name yet. He's about to find out. This is the story of how a man held his world together when it had every reason to fall apart, and the ancient principle that made it possible. Let's be precise about what was happening in that parking lot at 6:14 a.m. because the easy version of this story glosses over the specific weight of what Daniel was carrying. It wasn't just the loan. It wasn't just the surgery. His wife had called twice during the drive to the hospital. Their youngest daughter, 7 years old, had woken with a fever of 104. His wife was calm on the phone, the practiced calm of a woman married to a man who is often in a crisis. She didn't demand anything. She didn't have to. He knew he was needed in 3 places simultaneously: the hospital, the bank, home. And simultaneously is a word that exists only in physics problems, not in the real life of a 41-year-old man with 17 decisions to make before 9 a.m. This is not a unique story. Different names, different crises, identical architecture. The moment when life stops spacing out its demands and delivers them all at once, the way a wave does, not as individual problems, but as a single wall of water, and the person standing on the shore has approximately 4 seconds to decide whether to freeze, run, or find their footing. Most people freeze, not because they're weak, because they were never taught what to do with their feet. Daniel had been building his company for 11 years, 50-hour weeks, minimum. He had weathered a recession, a partnership dispute, 2 failed product launches, a pandemic. He was not a fragile man. But this morning, in the fluorescent half-light of a hospital parking lot, phone in one hand, coffee going cold. In the other, he felt the specific sensation that every high-functioning person eventually encounters and almost no one talks about honestly. The sensation of not knowing what to do first. Not incompetence, not fear, something worse. Paralysis dressed up as urgency. He was moving everywhere and going nowhere. Here's what nobody knew about Daniel Reeves in that parking lot. He'd been here before. Not here, not this exact hospital, not this exact crisis, but in the architecture of it, he'd lived this morning before. 22 years earlier, at 19 years old, working his first real job at a distribution warehouse in Greensboro, his shift supervisor had handed him a manifest with a 6-hour window to coordinate a delivery that should have taken 12. Wrong truck, wrong route. Third driver who'd called in sick that week. Daniel had stood with the manifest in his hand and done the thing he always did under pressure. He'd gone still, not frozen, still. While the other workers scrambled and argued about who was to blame and what couldn't be done, Daniel had stood very quietly for about 45 seconds. His supervisor had timed it and told the story later with either irritation or admiration, depending on who he was telling it to, and then started making decisions. Clear ones, in sequence, one at a time. They made the window with 20 minutes to spare. His supervisor asked him afterward how he'd stayed that calm. Daniel didn't have an answer. Not then. It was not a technique. It was not philosophy. It was not conscious. It was just his default. The stillness under pressure that some people have and most people don't, and that almost nobody can explain or teach because they've never stopped to examine the mechanism. He had never examined it until the morning in Charlotte. Until the moment when the stillness didn't come, when he stood in that parking lot and realized, for the first time in his adult life, that the mechanism was offline. That was the real emergency. The thing about a man who has always been steady is that when the steadiness cracks, it cracks quietly. There's no dramatic collapse, no visible breakdown. From the outside, Daniel still looked like a man making decisions. He was on the phone. He was walking purposefully between the hospital entrance and his car. He was answering messages. But inside, and this is the part that only he would ever fully know, he was running on noise. Not thought, not logic. Noise. He called his attorney, then his bank manager, then his attorney again before his bank manager had called back. He drafted a message to his 41 employees, deleted it, drafted a shorter version, didn't send it. He mentally calculated the default timeline 4 times each calculation, arriving at a slightly different number, which told him his mental arithmetic was compromised. He was reacting. Every move was response. Every decision was reactive to the last thing that had happened, rather than aligned to any clear-eyed assessment of what actually mattered most. This is what pressure does to even high-functioning minds when they have no framework to fall back on. It doesn't empty the mind, it floods it. The problem is not too little thinking it's too much, in too many directions, none of them chosen. By 7:30 a.m., 90 minutes after he'd arrived at the hospital, Daniel had made 11 phone calls, sent 9 messages, and solved exactly none of the 3 problems in front of him. His partner was still in surgery. The bank still needed 2 signatures. His daughter still had a fever. He sat in his car. And that's when the stillness came back. Not peacefully, not dramatically. It came the way the answer to a difficult math problem sometimes arrives not through effort, but through the exhaustion of effort, through having run out of noise. He sat in his car and he did something he hadn't done in 90 minutes. He stopped. And in the stopping, a question arrived that changed the entire morning. The question was not, what do I do? It was, what is actually mine to do? One word different. And the entire architecture of the problem rearranged itself. Daniel Reeves had not read Stoic philosophy. He wasn't that kind of man. He read industry reports, contracts, quarterly numbers. Philosophy was for people with more time than he had. But what arrived in that car at 7:31 a.m. was, without his knowledge, one of the oldest and most precisely correct ideas in the history of human thought. The Stoics Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca built their entire philosophy around a single observation, that human suffering, in almost every case, is not caused by what happens to us, but by our insistence on trying to control what we cannot. The gap between what is and what we demand it to be. That gap is where panic lives. That gap is where the noise comes from. That gap is where rational men become reactive, and reactive men make catastrophic decisions. Daniel, sitting in his car, had arrived at the edge of that gap without a map. But the question, what is actually mine to do, was the map. He took out his phone, not to make a call. He opened the Notes app, and he started writing. What he wrote was not sophisticated. It was a list, 2 sides. On the left, what can I actually control right now? On the right, what can't I control? Right side first, because the right side was eating him alive. His partner's surgery, not his to control. His partner's recovery timeline, not his. The bank's policy on dual signature requirements, not his. His daughter's fever, not his to remove, only to address what his employees would think if they heard not his. Whether Friday's client meeting survived this week, not his yet. He stared at the right side. 6 items. 6 things that had consumed 90 minutes, 11 phone calls, and every calorie of cognitive energy he had. Not one of them was within his authority. Not one. He put a line through all of them. Not to dismiss them, he understood they were real, that they mattered, that some of them carried enormous consequence. But to remove them, temporarily, from the jurisdiction of his action, they belonged in a different category. They required a different response than problem solving. They required acceptance. Left side now, what he could control. Whether he drove to the bank and explained the situation to the manager personally, in the same direct voice he'd used at 19 to coordinate an impossible delivery window, whether he called his wife back with a specific plan rather than vague reassurance, whether he spoke to the hospital's patient liaison and got a realistic timeline for his partner's surgery, whether he sent his employees one clear, honest message with a single actionable instruction. 4 things. Not 11. Not the sprawling universe of the 90-minute panic. 4 concrete, specific, executable things. He looked at that list and felt something he hadn't felt since he'd arrived at the hospital. Not relief. Not calm in any soft or comfortable sense. But the thing that precedes action in a man who knows what he's doing, clarity. This is what the Stoics were teaching, not detachment from life, not indifference to outcome, but the radical, practical, countercultural act of sorting what is real from what is imagined, what is yours from what is not, and then moving with complete commitment on exactly what remains. Epictetus, born into slavery in 1st century Rome, had written, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Not passive, not resigned. Tranquil. The specific tranquility of a man who has stopped fighting the river and started navigating it. Daniel put his phone in his pocket. He started the car. He drove to the bank first. Not because it was the loudest problem, because it was the one with the hardest deadline and the clearest action available to him. The bank opened at 9. It was 8:02. He had 58 minutes. He didn't call ahead. He had tried that at 7:15 and reached voicemail. Showing up in person was the only move left. The branch manager's name was Patricia Holloway. Daniel had met her once, 18 months ago, at the loan closing. He remembered her as precise and formal, the kind of person who followed procedure the way a surgeon follows protocol. Not inflexible, principled. He didn't walk in with desperation. He walked in with specifics. His partner was in surgery. Here were the details. Hospital name, surgeon's name, case number. Here was the nature of the authorization, what it covered, what it didn't, why a brief extension would not increase the bank's exposure by a single dollar. Here was what he was asking. 1 business day, not a week, 1 day, while he secured a notarized written authorization from his partner or arranged for a legal alternative. Patricia Holloway looked at him for a long moment. "I'll need to make a call," she said. "Make it," he said. She did. 14 minutes. He sat in the chair across from her desk and did not check his phone, did not rehearse the conversation, did not simulate outcomes. He simply waited. The simple act of waiting without spinning, is harder than it sounds for a man accustomed to motion. But it is the skill. It is the exact Stoic skill that almost nobody names directly. The capacity to tolerate uncertainty without immediately converting it into action. False action. Noise action. The kind of action that is really just anxiety wearing productivity's clothes. Patricia Holloway came back to her desk. 24 hours, she said. "Have it to us by close of business tomorrow." He thanked her. Once. Without excessive relief, without overplaying the gratitude, he stood, shook her hand, and walked out. One problem resolved. Not by luck, not by the crisis having been less serious than feared, by showing up in person with clarity and specifics, without the noise. He called his wife from the parking lot. Not with everything on his mind, not with the full weight of the morning. He had one specific piece of information and one specific question. "The bank is handled for today. How's her temperature now?" His wife said it had come down to 101. The pediatrician had a 10 a.m. slot. "I'll be there at 9:45, he said. She exhaled. That exhale told him what 100 words couldn't. He sent his employees a single message. Not a reassurance, not an update on everything. 4 sentences. A brief factual note that his partner had a medical situation, that the business was fully operational, that nothing was required of anyone today, and that he would provide a fuller update by end of day Thursday. 4 sentons. 41 people who had been about to spiral into exactly the same noise he just escaped were given, instead, a container, a structure, a clear edge to the uncertainty. That is what calm leadership actually looks like. Not the absence of crisis, the refusal to spread it. Here is the mechanism that breaks most people under pressure, and it is not what they think. Most people believe that panic under pressure is caused by the severity of the crisis, that sufficiently serious problems overwhelm sufficiently strong minds, that there's a threshold, personal, professional, biological, beyond which even the most capable person simply cannot stay functional. This is wrong. Panic under pressure is not caused by the severity of the problem. It is caused by the collision between what is happening and what the mind insists should be happening instead. The bank crisis was not, in objective terms, unsurvivable. The surgeon's timeline was uncertain, not terminal. The daughter's fever was serious, not life-threatening. Each individual problem, examined in isolation, had a path through it. The paralysis came from treating them as a single enemy, from refusing, as most minds do under pressure, to separate the manageable from the unmanageable, the immediate from the eventual, the real from the imagined. The mind under pressure wants to solve everything at once. It experiences the need to prioritize as a betrayal, as if choosing one problem means abandoning the others. And in that refusal to prioritize, it solves nothing. The Stoics understood this with clinical precision. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, commander of armies, administrator of an empire spanning 3 million square miles, wrote in his personal journal, "Do not indulge in dreams of what you have not, but count up the chiefest of the blessings you do have." Not a motivational poster, a battlefield instruction. When everything is collapsing simultaneously, the untrained mind demands a complete inventory of the collapse. The trained mind asks only, what is actually mine, right now, in this moment? That question does not minimize the crisis. It does not pretend the stakes are lower than they are. It simply restores the most basic operating condition for human intelligence. One thing at a time. You cannot think in parallel under real pressure. Neuroscience is unambiguous on this point. Under acute stress, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of planning, prioritization, and rational decision-making, loses resources to the amygdala, the brain's threat response system. The amygdala is fast and indiscriminate. It treats a financial crisis and a physical threat with identical urgency. It fires at everything simultaneously. The result is not heightened alertness. The result is cognitive fragmentation. Dozens of partial thoughts, none completed. Action impulses that cancel each other out. The experience of being very busy and completely stuck. The only way out is structure, not more effort. Structure. The dichotomy of control is structure. The 2-column list in Daniel's Notes app was not philosophy, it was triage. Military triage applied to cognitive resources. What is mine? What is not mine? Everything not mine set down, not because it doesn't matter, but because carrying it actively prevents you from handling what does. There is a layer beneath the technique that most explanations of Stoicism never reach. It is uncomfortable. It is the real reason that philosophy works, and the reason most people resist it even after they've seen it work. When everything falls apart, there is a temptation, powerful, almost gravitational, to match the intensity of the situation with an equal intensity of internal response, to feel the appropriate weight, to honor the severity of the crisis by suffering it in full. This temptation is not irrational. It is, in fact, a form of emotional integrity. When your business partner is in surgery and your daughter has a fever and the bank is calling, choosing not to collapse internally can feel like not taking it seriously, like a kind of coldness. The Stoics anticipated this objection. They addressed it directly. Marcus Aurelius lost 5 of his children. He grieved each of them. He was not emotionless, not disconnected from his own life. He cried. He wrote about love with unmistakable depth. He was fully present for every human thing that happened to him. But he did not allow grief or fear or anger or the vertigo of collapsing circumstances to corrupt his judgment. He made a distinction that most people never make, and that most philosophies never teach this clearly. There is feeling the thing, and there is being ruled by the thing. These are not the same. They are not even close to the same. Feeling the weight of a crisis is honest. Being ruled by it, allowing it to fragment your cognition, corrupt your priorities, and convert your legitimate concern into reactive noise is not integrity. It is indulgence. And indulgence under pressure costs everyone around you. Daniel Reeves was afraid on the morning of his crisis. He did not pretend otherwise to himself or anyone else. He told his wife plainly that he didn't know how the morning would go. He told his attorney that his head wasn't fully clear and he needed simple instructions. He sat in his car and acknowledged fully that he was in over his head. And then he sorted. Feeling, then sorting. Acknowledging the weight, and then asking, given this weight, What is the most useful thing I can do right now? Not the most complete thing, not the thing that proves I take it seriously. The most useful thing. This is the whole move. This is what it means to stay calm when everything falls apart. Not to feel less, to act better. The principle is called the dichotomy of control. It was articulated most precisely by Epictetus in his Enchiridion, a short manual written by his student Arrian, based on Epictetus's lectures around 125 AD. The opening lines are among the most practically useful sentences in the entire history of philosophy. Some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. Read that again slowly. Body not in your control. You cannot prevent surgery, illness, injury by force of will. Reputation not in your control. You cannot determine what 41 employees think by tomorrow. Command not in your control. You cannot compel the bank to extend your timeline. Opinion in your control. What you decide this crisis means. Pursuit in your control. What action you choose to take next. Desire in your control. What you decide you actually need right now. This was written by a man who had been enslaved, who had no legal rights, whose body was literally not his own in any legal or practical sense. And he arrived at this, that even with nothing, no freedom, no property, no guaranteed safety, the boundary between what is mine and what is not mine remained absolute and inviolable. Nobody could take what was inside the line. Nobody. This is not mysticism. This is not ancient wishful thinking dressed up as wisdom. This is the most accurate description of the human psychological situation that has ever been written down. Everything outside that line, every external circumstance, every other person's choice, every outcome you cannot directly determine is not your business. Responding to it, worrying about it, spending cognitive resources on it, matching its chaos with internal chaos. This is the mistake. The only question is what you do with what is yours. There are 3 specific practices that translate the dichotomy of control from philosophy into action under real pressure. They are not complicated, they are exact. The first practice: physical stillness before decision. Not prolonged, not meditation. 45 seconds to 2 minutes of complete physical stillness before the first significant decision of a crisis. Not because stillness feels good, because the amygdala's threat response fires fastest in motion. Physical movement, even the agitated pacing of a man in a hospital parking lot, reinforces the nervous system's read that a threat is imminent and action is required immediately. Stillness sends a competing signal, assessment mode, not escape mode. The prefrontal cortex, the part of you that can actually solve the problem, requires stillness to regain authority from the amygdala. 45 seconds, that's the price. Stand still, breathe. Do not reach for the phone. Do not move to the next task. Let the noise peak and begin to quiet. Then proceed. The second practice, the written triage. 2 columns on paper, or a phone's notes app, or the back of a receipt. It does not matter. Left column, what is mine right now? Right column, what is not mine? The writing matters, not the thinking. Writing externalizes the problem, moves it from inside the skull to outside it, and immediately changes the brain's relationship to it. A problem inside the skull is immersive. A problem on paper is a problem you are looking at. You cannot have perspective on something you are inside. Write it down. Cross out the right column, physically. The act of elimination sends a neurological signal that has been confirmed in multiple stress response studies. The brain responds differently to written closure than to mental decision. The pen through the paper is not symbolic, it is functional. The third practice, the single next step. Not the plan, not the strategy, not the full inventory of what needs to happen between now and the end of the crisis. One step, the single next most useful thing available to you in the next 30 minutes. One thing. When Daniel got back in the car after the bank, he did not think about Friday's client meeting or his partner's long-term recovery or what the Q3 numbers would look like in the aftermath of this week. He thought about one thing, what his wife needed to hear in the next 5 minutes. That was it. One step taken cleanly produces the ground for the next step. The mind can only hold one step at a time under real pressure anyway. Attempting to hold more is how you end up with the noise. One step, then the next. Not through the whole crisis, through the next 30 minutes. Someone reading this is about to object. They are about to say, easy to practice philosophy when the stakes are manageable. What about when they aren't? What about when the surgery doesn't end well? What about when the extension doesn't come through? What about when it actually falls apart completely, irreversibly? This is the right question, and it deserves the real answer. The dichotomy of control does not promise good outcomes. This is the single most important thing to understand about Stoic philosophy and the single most frequent misreading of it. The Stoics were not optimists. Marcus Aurelius spent his entire reign dealing with plague, military invasion, political betrayal, and personal loss. Seneca was eventually ordered by the emperor to take his own life. Epictetus spent years in slavery with no certainty of freedom. These were not men teaching the philosophy of things working out. They were teaching the philosophy of functioning when they don't. The dichotomy of control is not a technique for avoiding bad outcomes. It is the technique for remaining useful, clear-eyed, and capable of right action, even when the outcome is the worst one. When the surgery doesn't go well, the left column still exists. When the loan defaults, the left column still exists. When everything that can go wrong has gone wrong, there remains always a small set of things that are yours to do, yours to feel with integrity, yours to choose with clarity. The man who can access that list in the worst possible moment is not unfeeling. He is not in denial. He is free. Free in the only way that cannot be taken in how he conducts himself inside whatever is happening to him. This is the Stoic promise. Not it will work out, but you will not lose yourself in it. Daniel's partner came out of surgery at 11:40 a.m. Successful, recovery required. The client meeting moved to the following Tuesday. The client was, it turned out, more understanding than Daniel had imagined. A thing that tends to be true of most people in most situations, that the overthinking mind catastrophizes in advance. The loan authorization was signed the following morning. His daughter's fever broke by Thursday. Not everything healed instantly. His partner needed 6 weeks of recovery, and those 6 weeks were hard for the company. Stretched, improvised, loud with small decisions that had previously been shared. There were genuinely difficult moments inside those weeks that required more than one application of the 2-column list. But Daniel never lost the clarity of 8:02 a.m. in that parking lot. The moment when the noise peaked, exhausted itself, and left behind the only question that had ever mattered. What is actually mine to do? He started keeping a card in his wallet. Not a philosophy card, not a quote. Just a piece of white cardstock with a line down the middle. Left. Right. He's used it 6 times since that morning. Each time, the right column is longer. Each time, the left column feels smaller and more manageable than he'd expected. Each time, the noise stops. Here is what the Stoics knew that most modern self-help doesn't say aloud. The world will not stop collapsing. That is not the condition. The condition is not a life without crisis. The condition is a self that can function in one. Crises do not respect your schedule, your recovery period, your emotional readiness, or the fact that you already had a difficult year. They arrive when they arrive, simultaneously, sometimes. In the specific configuration most designed to overwhelm your existing resources. And in those moments, the 6:14 a.m. parking lot moments, the 2:47 a.m. ceiling staring moments, the moments when the phone rings with the thing you weren't ready for, your only real preparation is the architecture of your own mind. Not your network, not your resources, not your resilience in the abstract, the specific practice capacity to sort what is yours from what is not, to feel the full weight of what is real without being crushed by the weight of what is imagined, to choose your next action from clarity rather than noise. This is not built overnight. It is built in the 10-minute practices, in the 2-column lists, in the 45 seconds of stillness before the first call, in the years of returning again and again to the only question that produces movement in the right direction. What is actually mine to do? Epictetus asked it in chains. Marcus Aurelius asked it with an empire burning. You can ask it in your car. Before you close this video, I want you to do something specific. Think about the crisis you're currently carrying. The one that's been sitting on your chest this week. The one you're trying to solve with worry, with loops, with the same conversation running on repeat in the back of your mind at unsuitable hours. In your head, right now, draw the line. Left column, what is actually mine? Right column, what is not? Look at the right column. Cross it out. What remains is not small. What remains is not easy. But it is real. It is specific. It is yours. And that only that is where your energy belongs. The Stoics did not promise a life without catastrophe. They promised something more rare and more valuable. A mind that doesn't become one. Stay calm. Not because the stakes are low, because your mind is built for this. If this reached something real in you, share it with someone who needs it. There is someone in your circle right now in a parking lot at 6:14 inches the morning, out of moves, full of noise, with no one who has told them about the line. Go tell them. Subscribe if you want more. Not for the numbers, because there are more of these and you know you'll need them. Go draw the line.